first off, the law says that anything that's not water, or H2O, in water is a contaminant. So that means the oxygen dissolved in water that your fish like to, breathe in the rivers or your aquarium or whatever, or CO2 making carbonated beverages or whatever, that's a contaminant. So not every contaminant in water, of course, is harmful. In fact, most are quite useful, and we find them useful for our health and well-being, and also the taste of the water. Pure water tastes awful, it's very flat. So that's what a contaminant is. So the regulations on contaminants are only a few so that we don't have to test for everything in the world. And those that are regulated are divided up into the treatment or the health effects or non-health effect categories. So it's based on what kind of occurrence data occurs across the U.S. in order to establish a rule. What are the health effects or the bad actors that can cause people to get sick? And then what's the cost? In fact, GAO, the Government Accounting Office, says that a contaminant must be cost effective and have an impact on reducing disease. We can't just have a contaminant for the sake of having a regulation. Next slide, please. What are you and me, or what are we most concerned about? Well, things that are called acute health effects. Acute health effects is you drink the water, you get sick right away, like food poisoning. Or David talked about testing for bacteria or viruses, because those are the things that if we drink we can get sick. If they're present, we can get sick normally within hours or within a few days. And if you go back 100 years or so and you hear awful things about cholera and dysentery and all this sort of stuff, and in fact, unfortunately, it's happening in Haiti and other third world countries and issues where we don't have proper sanitation, that's contaminated water causing acute health effects. We're not talking about that here today. The next slide, please. We're really talking about the chronic, and that's also in the Act. What other compounds in water that can cause, if we drink it over a long period of time, chronic, can cause an increase of or a health effect of some sort? And so that's also in litigation, and that's based on a number of factors. The public has input, regulatory people have input, industry has input, utilities have input, and so on to come up with making a rule. And it's an ongoing process. It was essentially done around 2002, but there's new contaminants being evaluated all the time, but they're not put into law very quickly until they go through a rigorous standard. Next slide. Well, I'm sorry, this got a little washed out, but chronic health effects, though, are based on a level, based on a lifetime of exposure. What does that mean? The EPA uses animal studies and other things to extrapolate that to human health effects. And it's based on drinking 2 liters of water, about a half a gallon per day, through an average age 70, and hopefully we all surpass that milestone. And then based on that, if you're exposed to this particular contaminant, there's a likelihood of increasing the health risk, typically by 1 in a million. Not bad odds. Better than driving home tonight, which was what, 1 in 30,000 or something of a health effect from driving home. So you can put it into perspective. Next slide. In your particular case, Lori and others talked about the type of contaminants found, and it's on the maps up back. And I put them into 2 categories. It's really, there's no acute health effects there, thank God. We have the aesthetic, or things that can cause color, or stains, or taste, or odor. And the things tested for and found are iron and aluminum and manganese. I left out, well, there's metals under chronic too. But iron, aluminum, and manganese were there. Iron and manganese can cause some black water, can have an effect on your hot water heater, not so much on you. They're not health related. They can cause interferences with coffee making and things like that. So they're a nuisance, and they can cause staining of clothes. And calcium may be considered a contaminant. Calcium is what gives you the ring around the tub and the white staining of fixtures. And it's called hard water. It reacts with soap. That's a contaminant. That's not a health-related one. The chronic ones that are health-related, though, that are that are shown so far, are lead and sodium. Lead leads to plumbism. and it can affect the brain issues. And by the way, EPD has some very nice literature in the front lobby there, explaining each one of these contaminants, what they are, what health effects they are. And Orange County Utilities has done a nice summary of contaminants, primary and secondary, in the Safe Drinking Water Act. So this is summarized the material for you. Then there's also organics, the benzene, TCE, and disinfection byproducts. Lori explained benzene and TCE pretty well. And I want to talk a little bit more about disinfection byproducts. When you add, not right, go back. When you add chlorine to water, and all utilities around the United States add chlorine to water for disinfection to kill off the acute bacteria and viruses so you don't get sick. But there's a byproduct made from that, and they characterize it as chloromethane, or we used to call it chloroform. And if you add too much chlorine, you can get a high level. So those of you who have home treatment devices with chlorine in it, you might see if you can somehow adjust the dose or the amount of chlorine exposed to the water and lower it, and you'd probably be okay. The chloromethane is in the disinfection byproducts are in a group called trihalomethanes in the regulations, and Orange County Utilities and other utilities report this in their annual reports. For benzene, TCE, and other organic solvents or contaminants, a home softener will not work to remove those contaminants. You need a filter, and it needs to be more than a paper filter. It has to be a carbon filter, and normally it may require a carbon canister, a lot of carbon to remove that material. The metals like iron, manganese, and calcium, and even lead, to a certain extent, are removed by home softening units. Or zeolite softeners are sold by a number of companies. And, but as Lori said, when the metal is removed by the softening process, it exchanges it for sodium, and so you can increase the incidence of sodium in your water from a home softener. An easy thing to control that if you're sodium sensitive or have hypertension, or your doctor's advised you to lower your sodium intake, I would recommend is you take a drinking water line off of the softener. Try to have the well bypass the softener with a tap directly to your faucet that you use just for drinking water. You don't need to drink softened water. We like softened water for the bathtub and for the hot water heater and things like that. But you can drink non-softened water and then eliminate that risk. Lead is not so easily removed. It can be removed, but Congress has also enacted a part of the Safe Drinking Water Act with the lead and copper rule about 12 years ago, lead-free fixtures. So the tap on your older taps, particularly the faucets in your homes, can have a mixture of lead in that metal. And so now if you buy new fixtures, they're lead-free, and you can eliminate that risk. So I think with that, I'll conclude on the contaminant talk.